I'm happy to introduce Keith Gormley and Zach Foster, who will be talking to us about Prudential and the Bring Your Challenges campaign. Keith Gormley is the Director of Social Media Management at Prudential, and he has been since December of 2012. Previously, he was the Managing Director and Lead Social Media Strategist with Abrams Research and Abrams Media, working on GE, Ritz-Carlton, Microsoft, and AMC. And Keith holds a Master's in Digital Communication from Pepperdine University. Zach Foster is the Brand Strategy Director at Droga5, responsible for communications strategy on behalf of Prudential's master brand initiatives. Last year, this translated into the birth of Day One, a breakthrough retirement-focused campaign that was one of TED's 10 ads worth spreading and a recipient of the Gold Integrated Lion at Cannes. Before Droga, Zach worked for San Francisco agencies Venables Bell and Goodby Silverstein, working on campaigns for Audi, Intel, Chevrolet, among others. So please welcome Keith and Zach.
Thank you.
I've been working since I was about 16, one job or the other. The moment I could access the retirement plan, I just became firm about it. I'm done. I'm out of here. It's like it just hits you fast. You start thinking about what's really important here.
Welcome. I think a lot of you may be familiar with the Day One work. It's been around for about a year and a half. 2012 for Prudential was definitely the year of Day One, and has done a lot internally and externally to just shift the conversation. We created about 19 of those documentaries and short and long form content, and have done a lot of great things just in their new Day One funds. The vernacular's changed internally. I think it's been very successful in the context of just showing a different side of retirement. I think there was a trend for a while showing a very dramatized view of people on yachts and sailing around on beaches and salt and pepper haired models feeding each other pie. And I think that we've just tried to be honest and present things in a genuine, authentic, grounded way. We've decided to keep that as a big component of our Bring Your Challenges work, but have started to migrate into a new direction. Do you want to say anything else?
No, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
So look, it's no secret that Prudential is late to the social media game. I think for us, any number of factors caused this delay, everything from regulatory to compliance to human resources, human capital. But originally, I don't think it was a critical missing piece for us until we launched the Day One campaign. Just put aside the fact that the content you've seen here and the 19 documentaries were so emotional. That emotion made them very shareable. But the truth is we didn't have a vehicle to seed this content in the social space to make it as shareable as it could have been. But think about the website itself. Zach didn't mention this, but on the site, there's a way for you to actually share your Day One story. So you can post a picture of the Day One of your retirement. You could tell us a little bit of that story, and then it's shareable from there. But getting to the people to that site to make that effort to share was a little bit difficult, not having a Prudential social media presence. And our call to action to get to that site was broadcast. Since these are very personal stories, think about the last time you went to a website, a brand website, and shared a personal story with that brand or with people sharing there. It just doesn't happen. You don't do it very often, unless you're entering a contest or something. And look, we're not Nike and we're not Oreo. We're not going to give you, a free T-shirt if you share your story with us. These kinds of stories are made for social media. People go to Facebook in particular to share stories like this. So I think it was at that point that we realized that social was going to be helpful for us in this kind of campaign, and it helped us move that needle forward so that we could be a player in the social space. That's why in late January this year, we launched our Facebook presence for Bring Your Challenges. And really the Day One campaign helped us to educate how we would move forward with the new campaign, which we're going to talk about now.
So I think in the context of social and the theme of today being all around content, I think we're going to share a lot of content today. So you'll get a little entertainment, maybe a little knowledge, maybe a few chuckles. But I think Day One did a great job in showing the endpoint, showing Day One of potentially a longer retirement. But under the Bring Your Challenges platform, we felt like there was an opportunity to dig into the challenges that people face on the road to Day One. So, you know, in the category, there's a lot of talk around financial literacy, which I think there's a lot of work out there. I think it's sort of a saturated term. I think we had an ambition to go sort of a layer deeper and a step further. I think the first sort of source of inspiration is probably one that a lot of you all are interested in, which are the fields like behavioral economics, behavioral science, neuroeconomics. We just sort of inundated ourselves with intelligence from these fields and really started to get behind the reasons why people make the predictably irrational decisions that they do. Excuse the phrase. And I think we had a feeling, and we saw in some research that this idea of bring your challenges, this idea of tackling your biggest financial challenges, we felt like you can't tackle your challenges until you first understand them from the inside out. And so this was sort of our jumping off point for a lot of the new work. Another important piece for us was we thought it was really important to loop in a credible narrator, so someone who lives and breathes this stuff every day. I won't name names, but there are brands out there in this category that tap people from the Hollywood world. I think that works some of the time. I think that with the themes that we wanted to explore in this campaign, it was really important to get someone from this world to speak on these subjects, to be our voice. So we found Dan Gilbert after a pretty exhaustive search. He's a professor of psychology at Harvard. He's a best-selling author, great on camera. And Dan, in addition to being an expert on all things happiness related, was also doing a lot of interesting work in the fields of longevity. So the fact that we are living significantly longer, and our inability to picture our future selves. And that's part of the reason we can't plan today, because there's this disconnect between ourselves and ourselves in the future. So Dan was a great source, and longevity as a topic is nothing new. It's been around for a while. It's been in the consciousness of American culture for a while. Nat Geo, I don't know if anyone has seen their most recent issue, but it's all around longevity with a series of babies with the line, "This baby will live to 120. Times covered it. If you guys have seen Transcendent Man, you should, although it's terrifying. Ray Kurzweil basically says we're all going to be immortal. But it's a really fascinating subject, and one that we felt like needed to be brought into the consciousness of the financial world. And so that was the first task that we gave to Dan Gilbert, and worked with him to develop a demonstration, an experiment of sorts.
65 years old. When that became the official retirement age, back when my dad was a kid, life expectancy was about 61. Not much of a retirement, huh? Luckily, things have changed. To see how, we went out and asked people a simple question. How old is the oldest person you've known?
The oldest person I really know is probably my grandfather. He's 93.
94.
104 years old.
Then we gave them each a sticker and had them show us. Soon we learned a lot of us have known someone who's lived well into their 90s. And that's a great thing. But even though we're living longer, one thing that hasn't changed, the official retirement age. The question is, how do you make sure you have the money you need to enjoy all of these years?
All right, so this first aired during the Super Bowl this year. Hopefully you have seen it, if not then, since then. So after looking at this, you can see that there's a clear way for us to extend this into the digital space and into social. People were placing stickers for the oldest person they've known, and we wanted to make sure that others could be able to do that as well in digital, because you obviously weren't all in Austin to help us to fill that wall. We developed a stickers microsite where anyone could log in and place a sticker, but also they could tell us a story about the oldest person that they have known. So what is the advice that they had given you, or what is their secret to living so long? We had 3 experiences, all filtering back to the same wall. So you could access via the microsite. You could access on your mobile, so there was a fully mobile experience. We're seeing a lot of second screen participation. But then also on Facebook. So this was a great way for us to launch into Facebook, to have our page, but also an extension through a tab on the Facebook page where you could then dedicate your sticker, but also share that with others so it could spread. And it's more about sharing the story. It's not about sharing this with Prudential. It's about sharing the story of the oldest person that you have known and letting other people know about that. All the while, you're starting to think about longevity, and you're starting to see this visual representation take place on this digital wall, that lots of people know people who have lived into their 90s, even into their hundreds. We had people dedicate stickers for those 119, 120, 118. So really great stories started to develop there. But what we started to see also is that using social media, so we now have this Facebook page, our call to action from social was to go to this microsite and dedicate your sticker there. But in asking that, we found that more people were actually using Facebook to tell us those stories. So our call to action was go to this microsite, dedicate your sticker, but they would write in the comments on Facebook, tell us that story. They would tell us who the oldest person they knew was. And I think, again, this goes back to the idea that people are just more comfortable on Facebook and in social sharing their stories there rather than going to a website. Now, the microsite has worked. We've got a lot of really great stickers, over 2,000 in a short period of time with some really good stories, and it has a really great visual representation aspect of it. I think that data visualization, again, it helps you start to think about longevity. But we saw the most robust stories taking place actually on Facebook and in social. So again, the quality you can see here of the engagement that we were getting on social and in Facebook was really great. I think we would have expected that there would have been some negative things, maybe some comments that weren't appropriate, but most of what we saw were that people were really proud of the people that they have known that have lived so long. So again, social was really where we saw the best engagement.
Yeah, so this was sort of the first stage in getting the conversation going around longevity. And I think that we work closely with Keith and his team to create a library of content to spark additional conversation around longevity. So, little factoids like, the first person to live to 150 is alive today. Those stories that Keith was talking about, repurposing them in the social space. We did a deal with Jeopardy to actually have longevity-oriented questions featured on their online platform. And that National Geographic theme that we saw before, we also worked with them to develop an online tool to allow you to upload a photo of your favorite baby to be on the cover. That's my niece right there. So, the first month or two was really about sparking that conversation and starting to associate Pru, especially with this idea of, since we are living longer, we better prepare for a longer retirement.
And these stats and statistics that we've been posting, things like scientists say the first person to live to 150 has already been born. These kinds of things are a little bit shocking and controversial when you first see them, but they're incredibly shareable. Sure, we do broadcast them from our Facebook page, but we found that these types of statistics and facts are shareable between users. So for a brand like Prudential, there's nothing more valuable to us than when one user shares with another, rather than when us as a brand, we share it with the user. Talk a little bit about social media advertising for brands. It's something that we just can't avoid. It's part of what we have to do in order to participate in the social space. But I think the thing that's encouraging here is that it's actually helped us be more efficient with our targeting, rather than just broadcasting our message and our content out to a wide net. So collecting followers and trying to reach as many people with the message. What we've been able to do is target people that we know will be interested in the content that we have to put out, especially the content that we're going to be talking about today with the new Bring Your Challenges website and this behavioral finance content. We know that there's a thirst for this type of content out there, and using social media advertising, we've been able to target those groups who have already shown that they're interested in this content. And then we're less likely to see, number one, anything negative because of our social advertising, but also people are far more likely to engage with our content. They're more likely to share it, comment on it, because we know that they'll be interested in it. So we launched our Twitter feed just about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now what we're seeing in social is that rather than this just being a one-way conversation with us and the user, we're starting to see it as a two-way conversation, particularly on Twitter. Happens a little bit on Facebook, but much more on Twitter. We're able to be accessible to the fan. So it's not just that we're sending out a message and they're liking it or commenting on it. We're actually seeing fans engage with us and ask us questions. So we try our best to answer as many of those questions as possible. And that to us is a meaningful engagement. They're interacting with our brand, not as a brand, but as an individual at a company. Also, in addition to just interacting and answering questions, we're able to reach out proactively to fans who have mentioned, maybe they don't know that we have a social presence, particularly on Twitter. Maybe they've mentioned just the Prudential name. Maybe they've talked about one of our websites or our microsites or our broadcast commercial. We can reach out to them and say, thank you for your comment. Take a look here for more information. Here's our new website. There's lots more great content there. We have a lot of people talking about Dan Gilbert, who's our spokesperson, the videos that they're seeing airing on broadcast. We're able to reach out to them, and they don't know that we have a presence as Prudential. And we could say, we've got even more great content, more behavioral psychologists and experts on our website. Feel free to take a look at those as well. This has also been very helpful for us with our paid media outside of social. What we're seeing is that these paid engagements plus social media really equal earned impressions for us. We had a big takeover of the New York Times. This was in early April. It was a banner ad, but believe it or not, this was actually received very well and spread across social like crazy. The banner ad is not dead, apparently. This was a unique banner ad, though. This was tapping into the New York Times API, so you could enter your birthday and then see the cover of the New York Times on the day of your birthday. We were seeing lots of people share this. We also integrated within the banner ad. Once you shared it, you also shared our Twitter handle with that, so presented by Prudential BYC. The Twitter handle had only been live for about a week, and we actually gained about 2,000 followers due to this, all organic, just because we had included that in there. We also had articles by Mashable and ClickZ and Digiday, and that really helps, and obviously that helped to show people that we had the new Twitter handle, but also that this was a really interesting engagement, and the content was positive all around. So
I think similar to the banner and just the nature of the work that we're doing with Dan Gilbert, it's really important that we a lot of our work is very action oriented. We don't want to just go out in the world and talk about longevity, talk about the fact that people are living longer and you need to prepare. We actually want to act. And so I think, like Dan going out in the world and collecting stickers and doing this demonstration, we've been working with some of the world's leading behavioral psychologists, neuroeconomists, and so on, to dig deeper on this topic. And we worked with one really interesting guy named Adam Alter, who's a professor of psychology at NYU. And we developed the first episode of what's going to be a longer documentary series called Brain is to Blame, which dives into not just the decisions we make, but why we make them. The fact that maybe it's not our fault that we're making these decisions. Maybe our brain is to blame for a lot of the predictably irrational things that we do. So I want to share that with you today.
Hi there. Hi. Quick question for you. Instead of getting your coffee, would you mind giving me a couple of bucks towards my retirement?
Are you kidding?
I wouldn't even think about it.
Funny. For your retirement?
For my retirement.
You can give me a couple of bucks for my retirement.
Thank you.
This guy?
I don't know, just a few bucks would be a good start, I think.
I think I really want the coffee.
You really want the coffee?
Yeah.
All right, no worries. Not surprisingly, people weren't willing to donate to a stranger's retirement fund. And yet that's exactly the challenge we're facing every day when saving for our own retirement.
Why is that? Research has shown that we think of our older selves as strangers, and it turns out our brain is to blame. You see, when you think about yourself, this part of the brain lights up brightly. When you think about a stranger, it dims. And when you think about yourself in the future, the same thing happens. It's like you're a stranger to yourself. And as we saw at the coffee truck, nobody wants to give money to a stranger.
Right now, I'm not putting any money away. I'm just kind of focusing on the here and now.
I have not planned whatsoever for my retirement.
Can I picture myself in retirement? No.
No, I can't.
The challenge is, how do we connect with our older selves to make retirement more vivid and real? Researchers have used a number of techniques, but we wanted to try something new, something a little different. So we brought together 12 random people and one hypnotherapist. Our goal? To see if we could get people to actually feel like they're retired, and to find out if that would motivate them to prepare more for their future.
Welcome
I do not think I can be hypnotized.
Probably not.
No, not at all.
So we're here today to consider this whole idea of what it would be like if now you were already retired. Now, how can you do that? Because you're not retired yet, right? But I'm going to show you how we're going to start the process off. Gently let your eyes close when you're ready, and let's see where we go.
First, the group was brought into a relaxed state. Then, they were guided through a series of visualizations. An hour later, they woke to life in retirement.
1, 2, 3. Begin to come back to me. And when you're ready, I want you to draw a picture on that paper of you now that you're retired.
I saw myself as a teacher, and I put myself teaching kids.
Basically, it was mostly me writing a book. And then I put little X's because I had like sort of signed a contract too.
I'm still aggressive and wild, but okay.
For this handful of people, our experiment turned retirement from a distant event into something very real.
Did I encounter my future self? Yes, I did.
I was terrific.
It was surprising because he was younger than I expected him to be. Actually, I had hair, so I guess it's a cure for baldness in the future.
Like future didn't seem like future. It felt more tangible.
I didn't think of my wife until later on. And I thought I should put her in there.
No comment from me.
There are a lot of ways to connect with our older selves. But what if we started by just thinking about our lives at that age? Would that help us see our future selves, not as strangers, but as us in retirement? Would that change the way we prepare for tomorrow?
I feel like I need to do more. Like there's a fire under me more now.
Financially, my future self was in a totally different place than I am. So I feel like I need to learn how to kind of save more and spend less so I can like live bigger later.
Really?
To your retirement.
Thank you.
So obviously you can imagine the challenge of selling an idea like we're going to work with a hypnotist to a company like Prudential. And obviously we don't want to be known as the brand that hypnotized people into believing that they should save more for retirement. But I think the point here is Prudential as a brand and the work that we're trying to do is just aimed at getting people to think a little bit differently. Take a moment to just picture your future self. We may not be able to hypnotize everyone, but the fact that we have this disconnect with our future selves and there are ways to get a little bit closer to that person is just one step among many to get us to take action today. I think we use social as a tool to not only distribute this content, but also as a learning tool. So, we plan to make a lot more of this content in the coming months and next year. So, and so when we put this stuff out in the world, we can create that two-way dialogue that Keith was talking about. We can get feedback on this content. We can get an understanding of how this is motivating people to act. And that informs the content that we create next.
Yeah, I think you can tell by taking a look at that video that it's difficult to get people to think about themselves in the future and their longevity. It's just not a topic we want to naturally think about in our day-to-day lives. So social for us is a challenge in that the content that we put out needs to help people to start to think about that. It's an uncomfortable topic to think about. So we're doing our best to make it as engaging and interesting as possible. So in social, our key performance indicators are that engagement. So are people sharing? Are they retweeting? Are they commenting and liking? And we take that data and we look at how we've positioned that content in social. So what was the text? What was the copy? Did we use a link? Did we use an image? Did we use a video? Did it work? Is there a better way for us to do it, to present this content so that the next time someone sees it, they're considering these very important topics when they see our content? So we see social and our content as a cycle, as sort of a one feeding the other. Sure, we use our Facebook page and our Twitter feed and our LinkedIn company page to seed this content, to get it out there and broadcast. But once they're there and they've been driven to our microsite, we want them to share the content that's there. I mean, we aren't hooked up to show you the site now with Wi-Fi, but feel free to take a look at it. It's bringyourchallenges.com. It has tons of content like what we've been showing you. So videos, interactive, snackable pieces of content that we call them. Really just helping you to start thinking about all of these different behavioral channels, which we're going to talk about. So each feeds the other. The site feeds into social because you can share the items, but then also we're seeding content there and hoping that they'll come to the site.
And I think everything that we create on the site that Keith's talking about, which is bringyourchallenges.com, we've tried to launch an initiative, and we call it the Challenge Lab. And it lives in bringyourchallenges.com, but every piece of content that's housed on there is built to be modular. So we're not relying on people to come to the site and consume all of our content. The content is built to be out in the world, in the places where our audience is. And I think one of the unique things about the site is that we've broken it down into the 5 most pressing human behavior challenges. And we've talked to a lot of experts to really nail down, if you were to say, 5 things, what are the 5 most important things that are getting in the way of preparing for our financial futures? What would they be? And we've narrowed them down to 5 things, and that's sort of how the site is structured. So a lot of the content that you've been seeing around longevity is in this idea of the I Might Live How Long challenge. So the fact that there is this disconnect with our future selves, and we need to prepare for this longer retirement, and that's not something that we're sort of built to do. Second is the I'll Do It Later challenge, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's all around sort of the forces of procrastination, why we procrastinate, how we can overcome procrastination, and how we can get going today on planning better. Third is the I Want It Now challenge, which again is pretty self-explanatory, but it deals with how we overcome our instant gratification urges, how we temper those urges, those needs to consume now. I Just Can't Resist. You'll notice the bubble wrap visual. I Just Can't Resist is really just understanding how our emotions impact our financial decisions. So the fact that we, by nature, are social creatures. We are herd animals, if you will. And, a lot of times the wisdom of the crowds leads us to great places, but not always. And then the final one is the It Won't Happen to Me challenge, which deals a lot with the ideas of optimism bias and invulnerability bias. The fact that invulnerability bias, I think, is fascinating, which just says that we actually believe that ourselves and our families are less at risk than a stranger for something bad happening to us, which is just an insane concept. And I think optimism bias, the idea that we, as Americans especially, are optimistic people, but that often gets in the way of preparing, being more prudent about our futures and taking the steps necessary to get there. And if we had the site, we would bring that up now, but like we're diving into the financial conversation in a bit of a different way, we also present our information in a very different way. So instead of just saying the fact that 1 in 3 babies born today will live to 100, we actually wanted to play with typography and design to present these things in a unique, compelling way. So on the site, you have these rotating facts and snackables, as we call them. So more babies are born today are more likely to have blonde hair or blue eyes or play the drums than they're more likely to live to 100 than do those things. What would you have seen if you were 150 years old today? You would have seen the presidency of Abraham Lincoln and the invention of the movie camera. We also have a function called Timeline of Innovations, which covers some, legitimate, some sort of fun things that since the beginning of time that have impacted our longevity. So the fact that in the 1800s, duels were a thing, and so our longevity suffered because of that. But in the 1900s, water purification was big, and so our longevity spiked. So we've had a lot of fun with this and just delivering information and content in new ways. Another example of that is a new video that just launched yesterday that just gives a little bit of a nod to some of the forces that lead to a longer life, some more predictable and legitimate. They're all legitimate, but we had a little fun with it just in the tone.
Studies show you have a better chance of living longer if you eat a Mediterranean diet, drink a glass of red wine every day, enjoy gardening, live on a mountain, or are a woman. You'll live longer if you work near indoor plants, are Hispanic, and floss often. If you live in the country, do lots of yoga, are a married person, and have 4 or more children. If you occasionally indulge in dark chocolate and are right-handed. If you get along with your mother, have a younger mother, have a name that starts with A, and if you have a pet. So, it's simple. If you happen to be a buff, right-handed, yodeling country mama's girl enophile named Anna with a green thumb, a sweet tooth, a full house, and an unwavering respect for proper dental hygiene, then you could live longer.
So, I think the other thing to note is that that obviously looks very different than the brain is to blame stuff, and that's very intentional. And I think the part of the role that social is playing is to get different things out in the world that look a little bit differently, that function a little bit differently, and start to get a sense of what's working and what's not.
And again, it goes back to knowing our audience, that not every piece of content will work well for the entire audience we're trying to reach. So we're segmenting it a little bit more with specific contents for specific audiences.
The other thing that we've done, and to the earlier point of a lot of the literature, that I'm happy to give a list, although I'm sure you guys have read all the books. But we've dug into just some interesting, compelling facts from behavioral science studies and just made interesting sort of typography-centric visuals that are, very shareable. So the fact that, we have these great intentions and we buy all this fresh produce, but 1/3 of all produce goes uneaten. So the fact that, just knowing that we have good intentions in other parts of our lives, or the fact that a tearjerker costs you more than a comedy. So the fact that there are studies out there, they tracked people that come out of a sappy, sad movie, come out of a comedy, and the people coming out of the sad, sappy movie actually buy more right afterwards than those out of a comedy. So just getting in touch and being more aware of how our emotions are impacting our financial and buying decisions is just inherently interesting. And I think one of the things you may be wondering is, how do we come back around? And I think that one of the things about bringyourchallenges.com and a lot of all the content that we put out in the world is you're never more than one click away from financial action. So you can always, after the brain is to blame, you can always click through to find out more about retirement solutions, insurance solutions, investing solutions. You can always click to find a financial advisor. You can always, get a video breakdown a little bit more about why it's important to have income that lasts over the course of your retirement, or, hear from a Prudential thought leader about these topics. And I think in addition to the thought leaders that we've tapped from the Prudential side, it's also been an amazing process to work with some of the world's leading experts in some of these fields that we've talked about before, and been really cool to converse with them. And they're just sort of willing to offer guidance and contribute to the campaign for free, just because they live it every day, and they're thrilled that someone from this community is acting upon it. So we have a section on the site called the Roundtable, which right now has 6 experts from everywhere from Yale to Carnegie Mellon to Harvard. And they're just creating original sort of blog style posts. And the first topic was, what are the biggest behavioral challenges that we face in planning for a longer retirement? And so, one person wrote about the modern version of keeping up with the Joneses and the psychological impact of that. Another wrote about, you see the image of the guy boxing his brain and the fact that it's just not a fair fight, and there are certain things that we should understand about ourselves that can help us plan better. And this is going to be sort of an evergreen, constantly updated section of the site that can be syndicated out to different media partners and our social platforms. So we have a lot of hopes for this to flourish in the near future. And then the last thing I wanted to leave you with is just something that launched yesterday. And some of you may be very familiar with one of the most famous psychological studies ever, which was the marshmallow test. And we decided to just come at it, a little bit of a modern remake of this idea, which is a new piece of content that you can find online.
Going in here, we have a treat. Do you like marshmallows? Yeah. Yeah? Do you want to have a seat? Let's get comfortable. The deal is, you can eat this marshmallow now, or you can wait until I come back and I'll give you 2 marshmallows. If you decide to change your mind, that's fine, okay?
I'm waiting.
Okay, I'm gonna push you in a little bit more. Oh. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Two marshmallows? Yeah. Then don't eat the marshmallow.
Hey Lola, how'd you do?
Good, I was waiting.
You were waiting, good job. Here's your second marshmallow.
Thank you.
You didn't eat your marshmallow. Now, so you get another one.
That took a little bit too long.
I know, I'm sorry. Do you think your mom or dad would eat the first marshmallow, or do you think they would wait like you did?
Well, my dad would eat the first marshmallow, and my mom would patiently wait. I think my dad wouldn't do it right away. I think she would eat the marshmallow. And I think she would try the best that she could to wait. I chose to wait because patience is good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have some time for questions if anyone has them. Yes.
I was just saying that it was a wonderful presentation, which I'm sure we all agree. What I was curious about is a lot of the work that you're doing is very personalized to different channels and different audiences, and this has to be very labor intensive. So I was wondering, I mean, compared to traditional advertising, traditional media where you do one thing and just broadcast it. So how have you had to restructure the number of people you have working, both on the agency side and on the client side, in order to meet this kind of challenge?
Well, I think it's a challenge that anyone that runs a social media program faces, because you're always starved for content. You need things to publish. And when you start to become too predictable and the content becomes the same, that's when you lose your audience and you run the risk of them ignoring you, or when they see your posts, they just sort of glaze over them. So it's certainly a challenge for us. I think even getting into the social space for a financial services company takes a huge effort. It takes a team of people because there are so many considerations, everything from compliance and regulation to legal approvals for all of this content that goes out. So it's been a long process, and I think that's why it took us as long as it did to get here. But everything came together, I think, with our work with Droga 5, internal, in getting that content. I think that was a big part of it, and keeping that content fresh, but then also internally organizing so many groups of people and human resources. So getting teams of people in order to, number one, be available to post, to see everything that comes in. So comments from users, making sure we're responding in a quick manner. Customer service issues, and then knowing who should be contacted in case of which. I mean, we're a big business. We have a lot of different things that we do at Prudential, insurance, retirement, annuities, really across the board. So knowing who's appropriate to respond to which kind of comment, all these things had to come together. So it was really about having a plan, and the plan was first, getting the people on board was second, and then having the content. All of these things kind of came together at the same time.
One of the things that's interesting is you clearly are a big organisation, and just interested in how you involved your people in it. It must be a fantastic opportunity to get staff engagement, stuff like that up. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things that happened when we collectively brought this insight and this campaign idea to the leadership team at Prudential and a lot of the people over there is the Prudential people feel like they've been doing this work for a long time. They feel like they've been around for 137 years studying human nature, and they're a risk management company, so they've been studying the way that people, approach risk for a long, long time. They've just never made it consumer facing. So I think it was a little bit easier of a road to sell in this idea in this case, just because it was so true to who Prudential has been for a long time. And it's been fun to watch people rally around the concept, and I think there's going to be an opportunity to loop in more Prudential thought leaders who have had expertise and intelligence on this type of stuff to come out and be a new voice for the brand.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the core of the content, it's really kind of geeky and nerdy stuff. And I think the people in our company saw that and they were like, wow, you're speaking our language. This is great. And not only that, you've made it consumer friendly. You've made it so that other people outside of just our financial services group can understand it, they can grasp it, and we can get our message across about longevity and all these other channels that we're approaching.
Hi, it's a two-part question. First of all, brilliant campaign. I'm actually a fan of the ads before I realized that it was connected to you, so it's a thrill to meet you. Two things. First of all, can you tell me a little bit about how you assembled your team for this campaign? Because it sounds like you basically built it from scratch. The logistics around doing that and getting buy-in. And finally, talk a little bit about how the marketing people and the corporate comms people, if they work together, how you made that work and who did what.
Sure. I think, and this, again, is part of why it took us quite a while to get into the social space, because we weren't sure who should be handling that. Should it be corporate communications? Should it be marketing? Should it be someone else? And I think the answer is that it should be a hybrid of everybody. So the process was getting everybody on board, understanding what our processes will be. We have a 140-page document, which I call our Bible. It lists out everything you could possibly think of that we would need to do in the social space. So how do we respond to a comment, or when should something be deleted? Should things be deleted? Do we retweet our own internal people? So we've got thought leaders who have their own Twitter handles. Should we be promoting them? Should we be retweeting Dan Gilbert, who's our sponsor, our spokesman, excuse me. So a lot of these things had to be worked out in advance. So the easiest answer to that is that we had to plan long in advance before anything went live. As far as building the team, in addition to building the immediate team, so the people who run the day-to-day, which was really just a staffing issue. I mean, there's lots of young people who are so excited about social and they get social. So it was easy to find people who are interested in it and that can do it. But I think the bigger challenge was assembling the Prudential team. So stakeholders from each of the different businesses, from corporate communications, from legal, an advisory board. So who are the people who day to day will communicate with myself and determine what is the approach we should take? Aside from a content standpoint, which is sort of the easy part. We've got so much great content. It's easy for us to publish on this schedule, and we've got plenty to publish. But what should our approach be? How should we handle ourselves in social? Defining that brand image in the social space. Does that answer?
It does. But
Great.
could you tell me just how large a staff do you have?
Sure. I've got a staff of 5 total, but that's just my immediate team. And then our social media advisory team is, 30 people. And we meet, once a week to go over how things have gone. What do our statistics look like? What should we do differently? So there are lots of people interacting every day about what our approach should be. But day to day, we've got, 5, 6 people who are watching 24 hours a day everything that happens in our social footprint. So we started with Facebook, and they would watch Facebook using our social tools to see what's happening there. As we added Twitter, we had LinkedIn, we had YouTube, we turned comments on for YouTube. Suddenly we've got a lot more to watch, and we need more eyes to watch it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Project.
I just wanted to know, in the process of actually assembling this communication strategy, was there consideration for how do I make this ownable to your brand, to Prudential brand? And if so, what was that point? And if not, was it the bet that, the creative idea behind that was striking, that by leveraging the right social media vehicles, you would break through and kind of be there first before other brands? Or what happened there? It's kind of my interest.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we're not the first brand to talk about behavioral finance by any means. I think that we looked out in the world, and it felt like no one was focusing all their efforts on this field of behavioral science and why we make the decisions we do. I think that first and foremost, we wanted to crack getting the best possible content out there and making sure that the fit was right with Prudential. And I think maybe part of it was first mover advantage, and I think brand tracking will tell us that. Yeah, I mean, I think day one also helped a lot. The fact that over the last year and a half, at least to some respect, Prudential has become known a little bit for being just a more human, down-to-earth, authentic brand that hears from real people that have real anxieties about retirement. And I think that a lot of this stuff is obviously rooted in human beings and human beings' behavior. So I think that more and more we're trying to build those equities around Prudential as just a really human brand. So that's sort of what I'd say.
Yeah, and I think the time is right, too, for this content with the way that the economy has gone and the way the market fluctuates and the way people think about their finances is different now than it was 5 or 6 years ago. So telling this story from a human perspective and talking about real people has been, I think, a good approach for us. Other questions?
Do you have plans to carry this down to a local level for your field force to utilize these assets?
I think that's a great question. And the keynote speaker mentioned a little bit about this, the importance of the people who are on the ground actually carrying out your message. Again, this goes back to a regulatory and compliance. It's a difficult thing for us to have registered reps on social media, but we're working towards it. We have pilot programs out there that are testing different software tools that allow us to keep track of everything. Record keeping is a very difficult thing for us to make sure that not only are we keeping track and reporting on what they've put out, but before they put it out, we want to make sure it's appropriate, it's proper, it's representing our brand. But I think that speaks to a bigger and a larger question about how do you develop a master brand campaign and then have it funnel through to each of your businesses and then to the people who are actually doing the work day to day. So it's a challenge, but it's something we're definitely working on and thinking about. From a social perspective, I think LinkedIn is the perfect place for that, and I'm not just saying it because we're here. I think it's most people, most professionals have LinkedIn profiles. You have the ability now to broadcast content and share content, to share your perspective and to share the Prudential perspective. So I think it's a good place, and that's where we started. And I think Facebook is a good extension of that, possibly Twitter for more influencer, thought leadership kind of content. But we're getting there. We're working on it. How many people are authorized to tweet? 2. Yeah, so myself and then one person that works alongside of me, and that's for our corporate account. We also have a account for our nonprofit arm, Prudential Spirit of Community Awards, and they have 2 people that can tweet there. And then we also have a corporate communications account that's really more about news and earnings and that kind of thing, and there are 2 or 3 people there. But as far as for our account, we've got 2. But then we do have people who are able to monitor that all day, every day, and we have escalation processes where they're sending the content through so that the right person sees it. But we try to, that's part of our risk mitigation. It's keeping it to as few people as possible, not having it on your phone so that if, staffers out partying and they leave their phone by accident at the bar, someone can't tweet from our account. I mean, these are things that we're seeing. People are hacking into accounts, and the thing with the AP and Jeep, and you can go down the list of brands that have had these kinds of things happen. Constantly changing the password and making sure that very few people have access is a very important thing for us. And things are changing constantly with the platforms and the way people access them, so we are having to change our approach constantly. And I think being fluid is important.
Thank you. It was a great campaign. Loved it. Just wanted to find out from the agency side and how you guys approach behavioral finance. I mean, it's not a topic you can easily approach. How many planners you guys, and sort of like the structure you had.
So just internal structure, or? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think we have a pretty lean team at Droga. We have, I guess, two strategists on the account. We have a couple of creative teams. We have an account management staff, and I think from a behavioral science standpoint, you can't miss it. It's out in the world. It's everywhere. Dan Ariely is sort of the godfather of behavioral economics, and I think we, as a team, just started to read more about these topics, and just pick up books in the airport, read blogs, whatever whatever we could do. And I think it was a good little petri dish within Droga 5 to just see, a designer, for instance, suddenly start to geek out on behavioral finance. It's just sort of a beautiful thing, and I think seeing, we work at an ad agency where finance, sifting through a 401k packet is just the worst possible thing you could endure. And so I think seeing the effect that this type of stuff was having on just our people, and suddenly people were enrolling and upping their contributions in their 401k and reading more about how they can prepare for their finances, was a good little tiny, little test study of whether this stuff could actually resonate with consumers. So I think we embraced it wholeheartedly, and I think it didn't take long to see that the Pru people were already sort of spinning their wheels on that. So.
It helps too that it's fun, and you're seeing it more often in pop culture. So with podcasts like Radiolab and This American Life even dives into that kind of thing. You see it on TV, you see it in books everywhere. Obviously, these airport books are much more popular, but Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point, things like that, they're coming to the mainstream, and you're reading them, and you don't even realize you're reading about things that we're talking about anyway. So I think younger staff especially have touched on those things based on pop culture, or maybe they studied it in school. And then it's interesting to them. It's not flipping through a 401k packet or, the really nitty-gritty stuff. So approachability, I think, is the key. Back here.
First, amazing work. I absolutely love it. How are you measuring all of this and proving out success? And are you able to tie to actual business results?
That's a very good question. I think for us, it's in social, it's about awareness at this point. Eventually, we'll get to the point where we're more targeted and we're participating in business conversations about annuities or life insurance. we're not a consumer company in the sense that we don't have a website where you can go and click and purchase a life insurance policy. We're more B2B, financial professional. So our goal is to get you to start thinking about these big topics and then get you to see a financial professional so that maybe you can purchase one of our products through a financial professional. So making that line and drawing that line from A to B is difficult. I think it's something worth thinking of. From a more practical standpoint, our KPIs are really about engagement. So are people interacting with our content? Are they sharing it? Are they retweeting it? Are they liking it as a bit more passive? Maybe they're commenting. Are they going to our microsites and participating there? Are they dedicating a sticker? Are they watching our video? I think one of the goals from my office, at least, is when we're creating and seeding the content in social, we want the message to be self-contained. We want it to be as it is so that you don't have to do too much in order to get the idea that we're trying to get across. So if it's posting a link, that's a second step you have to take. So if you see the post in your Facebook newsfeed and then you have to click through to get the message across, we may have lost you. We've lost certainly a lot of people. So if we're able to get that awareness message and that get you to think about longevity and think about these different things with just the message itself, I think we've succeeded. So I hesitate to say that our only KPI is clicking through and retweeting and liking, because I know that the way that we've positioned the content is so that it can be consumed in one piece, even if it's passive.
I think the only other thing to mention is, in addition to the bulk of the content that lives on Bring Your Challenges, which we're watching closely, engagement metrics and interaction rates, all that kind of stuff, we're also measuring what we're calling soft conversion. So people linking through from content like the marshmallow video to actual Prudential solution-specific content. And those metrics thus far have been pretty strong. And then, in addition, like any brand, we watch brand tracking pretty closely. We've seen really preliminary stuff, but we're going to be looking close at some of the awareness metrics and early consideration stuff.
And look, I mean, we're digital people, so we certainly sit at our desks and we post something to Twitter or Facebook, and then we go to Google Analytics real time. We see who's clicking through. That's fun for us, but it's not at the end of the day our number one indicator.
On the microsite, a challenge we have is keeping the content fresh. So on the microsite, one of the challenges we have is keeping the content fresh. So how often are you updating it? And then what's working the best? Thought leadership versus video.
Yeah, I mean, I think at launch there was, unsurprisingly, a big burst of content. So just to get it up and to get initial engagement, but we have a pretty full pipeline of content that we plan to. Depending on some of the engagement metrics, we're going to it's going to be a bit of a slow play. Probably every month or so, we'll publish something new. We just had a new push of content that went live last night, and that consisted of maybe 4 new pieces on the site. But I think the most important thing we're doing now is just looking at the numbers and the types of things that people are interacting with, how we should prioritize the content, the type of things that are working particularly well on social. So I think more than anything, right now it's a great learning phase, but we do have a ton of content coming down the chute.
Thank you so much, everyone.